in 2009, President Barack Obama wanted to ensure that people coming into office would have not so cozy ties with companies that they previously worked for. So he wanted incoming officials to sign a pledge that would ensure that if there was a company or a corporation that they worked for, there would have to be at least a 2-year time span between when they worked for the company and when they came into office in order to sever, you know, understandable ties so there isn't as much corruption. Well, Donald Trump and his administration have decided they have no interest in signing that pledge, and that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. So that's a problem, considering the fact that you have someone like Rex Tillerson, who was the CEO of Exxon. Apparently, they gave him $180 million in his retirement package, and so yeah, cozy ties to a huge corporation. So is there a conflict of interest issue there? Is there a problem with corruption there? Absolutely. There are other cases as well, but I want you to jump in, Cenk.
Yeah, so Obama, to his credit, but as usual, he didn't take credit for this, made people sign that 2-year pledge. It was an executive order where they could not work on things related not just to their previous firms, but to also any of their previous clients that they served in those firms. That's a pretty good pledge. Now, look, I blame Obama for not going to the heart of the issue and trying to get money out of politics. But this was among the small changes that he did. But that small change was positive. It was going in the right direction. Now, Trump, of course, headed in the wrong direction. So by law, they have to at least have a 1-year pledge.
Yes.
Right? So the Obama's executive order was 2 years. So, and your clients as well. By law, it just is about your own business and for 1 year. So now, Wilbur Ross has signed the 1-year pledge, and Rick Perry has. And Rick Perry used to be on the board of Energy Transfer Partners. It's very relevant for DAPL. And so that's good. At least they're abiding by the bare minimum.
Yep.
But then there are others. Well, they could do the 2 years. They could do the executive order that is still in effect, by the way. Trump has not repealed it. If he has to repeal it in order for them to actually get away with doing only 1 year. Well, I mean, Rex Tillerson, they gave him $180 million before he left.
Right.
You think that buys some loyalty? You think that he's,
course.
as soon as the year is, first of all, he's not even going to wait for the year. He's just going to tell his underling, oh, I have nothing to do with this, but boy, I think Exxon makes a good case to lift those sanctions on Russia that cost Exxon a $500 billion deal. But even if he were to not do that and he wanted to actually follow the law, on the first day after that runs out, he'll be like, okay, we're doing the lifting the sanctions, et cetera. But anyway, they'll do all that regardless. But then you look at Gary Cohn, who's now the National Economic Council Director. Mm-hmm. He was the Goldman Sachs president. You know how much Goldman Sachs gave him? $100 million on his way out. Remember, Cheney got $34 million from Halliburton on his way out.
Yep. And
then Halliburton got no bid contracts from the guys who claim that they're for the free market system, right? No bid contracts, a monopoly on a war that Cheney started. So that's a nice little thank you, and they made billions off of that. Mm-hmm. So that $34 million to Cheney was pocket change. It was money well spent. So now ExxonMobil has a $500 billion deal in place with Russia that's going to go as soon as Tillerson lifts those sanctions. $180 million to Tillerson. Well worth it. Goldman Sachs is going to make billions. $100 million exit package, well worth it.
And look, Trump has already been on the record talking about the sanctions that Russia is dealing with, not because of what happened in this past election, the sanctions related to the annexation of Crimea, okay? Trump was talking about that and how, Russia's suffering. We got to lift those sanctions.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So keep that in mind.
That's coming. But you know what? One more part of this that's important, and that refers to General Mattis, James Mattis, who's going to be the Defense Secretary. So he was a board member of General Dynamics. And this is the revolving door that I told you about that leads us into more wars. So that you rise up the ranks in the military, you become a general, et cetera, and then you retire. And then the defense contractors hire all the top generals. They hire almost all of them. You know how much you got for being a board member? A board member is not someone who runs the company. It's a person who oversees the CEO, and they have usually quarterly meetings. You might prepare a little bit for those 4 meetings a year. $1 million. Now, you think every guy rising up the ranks, I'm not talking about the average guy in the military. Average guy is just doing what he's told and sacrificing a lot, right? But when you get in the upper ranks, you think those generals aren't thinking about the paycheck they're going to get from the defense contractors? And lo and behold, those generals keep on recommending that we use those defense contractors and buy more and more of their equipment and start more and more wars. And then the revolving door works this way. General to defense contractor making $1 million, then back into the government as a defense secretary, start more wars, then back into the defense industry and make millions of dollars more. And by the way, even if you leave in a lot of these industries, they give you a giant exit package on your way to the government to do the right thing. And this is how we get a military-industrial complex, and this is how we get systematic corruption. And that's what we're living in today. If you like this Young Turks video, wait till you get a load of Young Turks membership. So many more shows and no ads at all. Come and see tytnetwork.com/join.